Hi everyone, the moonlight is beautiful tonight as I sit by the window, ready to share stories with you. How's the weather where you are? Is it a perfect night for storytelling? Before we begin tonight's stories, subscribe to our channel and like. Let me know in the comments where you are. What time is it there? 20 minutes past midnight. The last class at Standing Will Cram School finally ended. Mr. Ming sighed, watching students file out. For 3 decades, he had transformed from a passionate young teacher to the white-haired founder of this cram. School, witnessing countless stories within this old building. That's all for today, Ming said to the part-time student assistant organizing handouts. Mai was his most reliable helper, attending an elite high school during the day and working here at night. Despite her heavy coursework, she insisted on working to help with her family's finances. Just a moment, Mr. Ming, Mai replied while returning reference books to their places. The aged wooden bookshelf creaked, telling tales of the building's years. Hua was the last to leave. Once a top student, lately his mind seemed elsewhere. Ming knew Hua's parents were going through a divorce, placing unimaginable pressure on them. Young man, Hua, shall I walk you downstairs? Ming offered. No need, teacher. I can manage. Hua forced a smile before disappearing around the corner. The cram school was especially quiet at night. Worn steps, faded bulletin boards, and an old water dispenser at the corridor's end appeared particularly desolate under the dim lights. The walls displayed yellowed admission records, documenting countless students' youth.as. Ming prepared to turn off the lights. He heard faint footsteps from the 3rd floor. Strange, hasn't the 3rd floor been vacant for years? Ming frowned. That floor had been sealed since the incident 15 years ago. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the sound of fabric rustling. Ming stood at the stairwell, watching a figure in an old-style green uniform slowly ascending. It was a discontinued style he remembered clearly from his early teaching days. Student, Ming called out tentatively. The figure stopped and slowly turned in the darkness. Ming saw the face, or rather, where a face should have been. The uniform was crisp, the leather bag buckle still gleaming, a discontinued Pacesetter student watch on the wrist, and an old edition textbook clutched too. Its chest. But the face was just blank. Mai's scream broke the silence. She had somehow appeared behind Ming, pointing at the figure. Teacher, isn't that? Ming recognized the textbook. The 1989 edition, its yellowed pages still bearing traces of dark brown stains. That was the year of the incident he could never forget. Run, Ming pulled Mai downstairs. Behind them, the sound of turning pages echoed through the empty stairwell. The next morning, the security guard found a water puddle in the 3rd floor corner, beside a yellowed textbook. On the first page was a faded inscription, Perfect Score. Commemoration, 1989. Years later, Ming learned from an old janitor that the building was converted from a girls' high school. In 1989, an excellent student stayed late to study after mock exams, but never left the building even now. Teachers occasionally hear pages turning from the 3rd floor at night, along with the distinct ticking of a Pacesetter watch echoing through the silent corridors. At 3:15 in the morning, Dr. Chen finished his rounds at Evergreen Memorial Hospital. The night shift was always challenging, but something felt different tonight. The fluorescent lights flickered more than usual, casting strange shadows in the long corridors. Walking past the old pediatric ward, now used for storage, he heard the distinct sound of a music box playing. Curious and concerned, he pushed open the heavy door. The room was filled with abandoned medical equipment, covered in white sheets that seemed to glow in the darkness. The music stopped Dot in the corner. He spotted something unusual, a small wooden box, intricately carved with traditional patterns. It seemed out of place among the modern hospital equipment. As he reached for it, a child's laughter echoed through the room. "Hello?" Dr. Chen called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. No response. The box contained a series of origami figures, 12 of them, each representing a different animal from the Chinese zodiac. They were yellowed with age, but perfectly preserved. On each figure, someone had written the same character, over and over, meaning life. As he examined them, the overhead lights began to flicker rapidly. In the strobing light, he saw a small figure standing in the doorway, a child in old-fashioned hospital pajamas, holding a 13th origami figure. The child spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Doctor, can you save them all?" Before Dr. Chen could respond, the lights went out completely. When they came back on seconds later, both the child and the origami figures were gone. Only the empty box remained, with a fresh patient chart inside. The name on the chart was his own, dated for tomorrow. The next evening, 12 new patients were admitted to the emergency room, one for each zodiac sign. As Dr. Chen began his shift, he found an origami figure on each of their bedside tables, and he knew this would be the longest night of his career. In a towering office building, in Taipei's bustling eastern district, when the city lights blur into the darkness, this is where our tale begins, on the 15th floor. A software engineer named Amy Chen often worked late. Far below, on the ground floor, there was a place called Eternal Gaming, a 24-hour internet cafe. In those quiet hours of night, it became a sanctuary for both gamers and lonely souls working overtime. The cafe had a mysterious atmosphere, soft blue light from computer screens, casting strange shadows on the walls, the smell of instant noodles and coffee lingering in the air, like a world between reality and dreams. One fateful night, around 11 p.m., Amy came down for her usual break. The air felt different somehow, heavier, thicker. The clicking of keyboards and distant game sounds seemed to fade away, until suddenly an elderly man collapsed. Time seemed to stop as Amy rushed to perform CPR. Each moment stretched into forever. Each breath, each compression, a desperate fight between life and death. Though the medical team arrived, the elderly man's fate was already sealed. But dear listeners, this is not where our story ends. 1 month later, in the darkest part of night, when the boundary between dreams and reality grows thin, Amy received a warning. An elderly man, speaking in her grandmother's dialect, came with an urgent message. The morning bus she planned to take would never reach its destination, some say. In the modern towers of Taipei, between the glass and steel, ancient spirits still watch over us. That kindness, even after death, creates bonds that cannot be broken. Now, when Amy takes the late-night elevator down, in those quiet moments, she sometimes sees a gentle shadow nodding at her. And in that space, between light and darkness, between this world and the next, she understands.